but there's a lot of nuances there to leadership. Psalms 139, David is reflecting on God's omniscience and omnipresence, and he marvels at the intimate and complex way in that God created him. And it is an awe-inspiring thing when you take on the concept that God made all of us and we are all unique. We're all made differently. We all process and respond to information differently. We all communicate a little bit different. We all talk a little different. We all listen a little different. We all avoid things differently. We all embrace things differently. We solve problems differently. We love, we show kindness, we mourn differently. We all may have some things in common in how we do those different things, but there's a different approach, there's a different quality that we each have that we bring to the table in these different circumstances. And these traits can be inherent, they can be God-given, you could be born with them. They can be developed through nurture, what you've been taught or your experiences of life. There's large debates around which one of those carries more weight, and it could be just the circumstance in which you're discussing that, whether it's a nature or nurture thing. But we all have different tendencies, we all have different characteristics. And some are inherently leaders. Gallup poll in 2015, I know it's a little bit dated, but I think it still rings true today, says that 10% of the population have an inherent talent for effective leadership. There's a lot of words in that, but effective leadership is something that is important there. But 10% of the population has an inherent talent for it. 20% have the potential to lead if given the proper development. So these aren't large numbers. If there's 100 people in here tonight, 10 of you are potential leaders. 20 of you have the potential to become one through proper development. But 70% of leadership ability is learned through experience and development. So to me, that means that while a low percentage of people may think that they're good leaders or may inherently be a good leader, that 70% of the qualities that it takes to be a leader can be learned through experience and development. And that's important because the more you talk about leadership, the more you understand leadership, the more you can gravitate to it, the more you can want to become one, the more you can help, the more you can encourage leadership because you understand more of what maybe they're going through. You understand more of what the process is and who these folks are and what they're doing and what they're trying to achieve. Some avoid leading altogether. Their Pew Research Center did a study, and it said that 6% of Gen Z and millennials state that leading is a main goal. Only 6%. That's not a big number. Only 6% of our younger generation wants to lead. Millennials are my age and younger I forget what the age cutoff is, but mid 40s to Gen Z, wherever that ends. 20% frequently took leadership roles when growing up, and 44% of those rarely or never did. So pretty low percentages on those wanting to lead early in life. There's another one that I like, and this is a lot of statistics, and you can take it or leave it. You know, some of those are only as good as the people that answer them. But 81% that took on leadership roles when they were encouraged, meaning that when they were asked to take on a role, they accepted it when they were younger. And that led them into other leadership capacities as they got older. So I think there's two components here. One is training those that are younger in a way that they don't look at leadership as a negative, but a positive. You know, there's a lot of reasons why someone wouldn't want to lead. I think a lot of those are evident, a lot of responsibility. You may not have the talent for it, but if you do, but it is a lot of responsibility, you may not want to take on that responsibility. But 81% that when asked to lead, they did, and they continued that throughout their life. So the more we get involved and the more we learn about leadership, the less it becomes taboo or the less it becomes troublesome in our minds, and it becomes more of a clarity thing. We can understand it a little bit better. So why discuss leadership as a church family? So I think sometimes that lack of leadership desire stems from a lack of knowledge. So the knowledge will help build trust in the process. Trust in the process leads to engagement with leaders. Engagement leads to experience. which increases the likelihood one leads. And you look at how that flows down from the older generations to the younger, and the more involved that we can get the younger into these opportunities, the more likely it is that they'll want to desire to lead in the future. And again, like I said earlier, everyone leads. No matter your state in life, no matter where you're at, there's an opportunity that you are presented almost probably daily that you can lead in your life. Someone's going to want your advice. Someone wants your counsel. And in those opportunities, you are leading them in some form or fashion in how you respond to them. The other thing is that I think everyone follows. Everyone is led in some form or fashion, whether it's at home, at work, or at church. He who thinks he leads but has no followers is only taking a walk. That was John Maxwell. I already said it earlier. So understanding how and why helps us relate and ultimately support leadership. So leadership is something that I've kind of gravitated to, or at least the concept of it. And but if you look up books on leadership, you will not see the end of the long list of books that you can look at. Everybody has an opinion on what a leader is, what a leader looks like, how they talk, how they act, how they respond to others, how they approach a situation. And I think in the Bible, if you take this book and you look at any other secular books, they're all the good ones are pointing back to exactly what God lays out as what leadership is in a godly setting. And there's a lot of men in here that do it well. There's a lot of characteristics that these men have that we're going to go through this quarter of these 10 different men. And the first one we're going to talk about is Jethro. Let's go to Exodus 18. Jethro is first because he has the absolute best name in the Bible, I think. When I hear the name Jethro, I think this guy has to be a country boy in my mind. So Jethro was a priest of Midian. He was Moses' father-in-law. Zipporah was his daughter, and Moses married her. They had two sons, Gershom and Eleazar. And Zipporah and the two sons are with Jethro. So after hearing about all God had done for Moses and the people of Israel, bringing them out of Egypt, Jethro meets up with them in the wilderness at their camp at the mountain of God. And Jethro sends word that I, your father-in-law, and your wife and her two sons are coming to you. I find that wording interesting, that Moses' father-in-law says, me, Jethro, your father-in-law, your wife and her two sons, not your two sons, not y'all's two sons, but her two sons are coming to see you. So Moses shows signs of respect by bowing and kissing him once they get there. They make some small talk and they go into the tent, and Moses tells them the story of how God delivered them through Egypt. And then Jethro rejoices at this and he gives credit to God. And we're going to start in verse 10 of chapter 18. And Jethro said, blessed be the Lord who has delivered you out of the hand of Egyptians and out of the hand of Pharaoh, and who has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods, for in very thing in which they behave proudly, he was above them. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and other sacrifices to offer to God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. So you see, Jethro comes, talks to Moses, and he praises the Lord for delivering Moses and the rest of the Israelites out of the hand of the Egyptians, and he makes an offering to God. Jethro observes Moses' judging of the people in 13. And so it was on the next day that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood before Moses from morning until evening. So when Moses' father-in-law saw that he did for the people, he said, what is this thing that you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit and let the people stand before you from morning until evening? And Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me and inquire of God. When they have a difficulty, they come to me, and I judge between one and another, and I make known the statutes of God and his laws. So Moses' father-in-law said to him, "The thing that you do is not good." Excuse me. "But both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out, for this thing is too much for you. You are not able to perform it by yourself. Listen now to my voice. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. Stand before God for the people, so that you may bring the difficulties to God, and you shall teach them the statutes and the laws, and show them the way in which they must walk and the work they must do. Moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and of 10. And let them judge the people at all times. Then it will be that every great matter they shall bring to you, but every small matter they shall judge themselves. So it will be easier for you, for they will bear the burden with you. If you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all the people will also go to their place in peace." So Moses heeded the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. And Moses chose able men out of Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds and fifties and tens. So they judged the people at all times. The hard cases they brought to Moses, but they judged every small case themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went on his way. So, a little bit of a long read, but you see that Jethro comes in and meets Moses. Moses obviously respects Jethro, not just as his father-in-law, but as being a priest of his own people. He has some authority. He has some experience. He has some knowledge of these different types of situations. And so Jethro observes Moses working. And I'm glad that my father-in-law doesn't come and observe me working, because I would not want to hear what he has to say. He's a perfectionist, and I'm sure he would have some pointers for me, and I would heed those. But anybody that comes into your work setting and observes you and then has something to say to you about that, that offers up the opportunity for conflict, right? There is probably some easy tension that can be created in this situation. But Jethro is a man of empathy. Even though he's not the one in charge, he provides counsel. He sees what Moses is doing, and I think he kind of sees the direction that this could go. Whether he experienced it himself or not, he's got some wisdom involved, and a lot of wisdom that applies here. And he looks at the situation and he says, all right, there's a better way. Jethro was a relative, not even an Israelite, and he comes into Moses' world. As my dad would say, it wasn't his circus and it wasn't his monkeys, but yet he took it upon himself to give advice to his son-in-law because he loved him as much as Moses loved Jethro. He observed someone he loved doing something difficult that could potentially cause him harm or the people of God harm. And so he saw this opportunity and he took it. Now, how did he approach it? Well, the first thing he said was, listen to me. Heed my voice. He said, what is it that you are doing? Calls him out a little bit. And then he says, listen to my voice. I will give you counsel and God will be with you. So I'm going to let you know what I think. But know that God is going to be with you as you make this decision to take my advice or not. The other thing that Jethro is, he's a straight shooter. And when you think about a guy with a name like Jethro, I think he's got to be a pretty straight shooter, right? He's that old country boy I see in him. You and your people are going to wear yourselves out. You can't do it alone. Now obey my voice. That takes a lot of moxie. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of spirit for a man to come into somebody else's world and say, look, I have concern for you. This is what I see. Listen to what I'm going to say. Not only was he empathetic and a straight shooter, but obviously with how he approaches this situation, you can see through his wisdom, he's a problem solver. It wasn't just about Moses and finding a better way for him to do something. It was about the people as well. You can do it alone and you'll wear yourself out, but here's how to approach the situation. And I think when you look at kind of where he was in his station as a priest, he's probably seen a thing or two. He's probably encountered these types of situations where one man takes on too much and it burns himself out, and he can no longer do the task that he's been made to do or grown to do or trained to do because he's taken on too much. So he tells him to get help. But he doesn't say, all right, get help. Now I'm going to go back to my home and good luck, Bubba. No, he gives him the advice. He gives him the counsel. He gives him the recommendation. He says to continue to be the conduit between the people and God. Take their cases to God and likewise bring God's statutes and laws to them, how they must walk and how they must do. He says, take the information from God and present it to them so that they know the authority that you've been given by God is still established. God's still in charge, and they know where to go and how to be. Take their concerns, their large issues, and give them the answer, and take those concerns to God. Continue to be that conduit, but get some help. And then he gives some criteria for these men. And I find it interesting. There's a nice parallel here into the church and leadership and how it was established, right? He says, get God-fearing men from all the people, not just a certain sect, not just a certain group, but get God-fearing men from all the people. Make sure that they're trustworthy and they hate a bribe. So they don't want money. They're not in for it. They're not in it for the fame or fortune. They're in it because they fear God, they love the people, and they're trustworthy. And then he kind of sets up this hierarchy where you have some men over thousands and hundreds and tens, and he goes down to help bear the burden between the rest of them and distribute that load. He gives them the authority to judge on your and God's behalf on the small matters. So this is kind of the opposite of what you think of when you hear the word micromanage, right? Where I don't know if you've ever had a job where your direct boss, your manager, wanted to do everything for you because, let's be honest, it's easier when you do it yourself, right? My wife tells me that all the time. It's easier if I just do it myself. I can't fold a sheet to save my life. But we do it together and it takes twice as long, but we have twice as much fun. But sometimes it's easier to do it yourself, but that's micromanagement. And so what he's saying here is don't do that. Take your authority and give it to these men and let them make the decisions on the small matters. But the large matters, have them bring them to you. The great matters they shall bring to you, and you can take them to God. So it keeps that authority in place that God established where Moses was to lead the people, and Moses is still judging them, but he's relegating some of that authority to others to help bear that burden. So the wisdom here of Jethro is evident. His understanding of who he was to Moses, his understanding of the circumstances and the potential pitfalls of what Moses was doing, and his timing and delivery of the advice were on point. So these three things I'm going to go through these in the application. But when you think about the wisdom of Jethro and how it kind of unfolds in this, 12 verses here, he's not just a nobody. He's not just a normal guy in the crowd. He has a relationship with Moses. Moses trusts him. Moses loves him. He respects him. And so he presents to him this information. He understands the circumstances and the pitfalls that can come to him. Because he loves Moses, he wants to get that information across to him in an appropriate way where he hears it correctly. Because he knows that if he doesn't follow what he's recommending, that it could potentially hurt him or God's people. So he really wants this to get across the right way. And then his timing and his delivery of the advice. So first application, relationships matter when giving counsel. I think we all have opinions. We all have our own ideas, good or bad, right? My opinion might be good on one topic. It might not be on the other. Take the college football playoff, for example. My opinion is really good on that one. Brady's is not as good. But our opinions are going to vary. And so when we have these circumstances in which we want to share our opinion and provide counsel to others that we believe they need it, we understand that they have a problem and we want to give them that advice. If we don't have a relationship with them, it's going to be really hard for them to accept that in the right way. Is it not? And so the closer you are to that person, the easier it is for them to hear it. And again, this isn't just like negative criticism. It's mostly, it can be positive as well. But regardless if you are the leader or follower, the best way to make a positive impact is to have a relationship with that person. Jethro isn't just another guy in the wilderness, but someone Moses loves and respects. This conversation goes different, I think, if someone Moses doesn't know or respect has it with him. You know, if it was just a fringe relative or a fringe person within the children of Israel that came up to him and said, "Hey, you need to listen to me and what I have to say." Is Moses going to receive that delivery the same way that he receives it from Jethro? Maybe. But the fact is that that relationship's there, and so Jethro can approach him in the way that he does. When considering if you should or shouldn't give advice, I think the best thing in this situation is to be self-aware. Am I the right person to have this conversation? Jethro was the right person to have that conversation with Moses. He had the experience, he had the knowledge, he had the understanding, he had the relationship with Moses that he could talk to him in those ways, to get close enough to him to have that discussion. Am I close enough to this person that they will receive the counsel in the way I intended? A lot of times when we intend something to be heard one way, and then we say it, and it's not heard that way, and then we stumble along and we make a mess of things. Or is that just me? There are times when I shoot from the hip. I don't think about what I'm wanting to say or what I should say or how I should say it, and I just say it. And those times usually don't end as well as when it's a thought out application of what I'm wanting to get across. What I'm intending to say and how I say it matter. Relationships are the bridge over which truth travels. Proverbs 27:6 says, "Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel." You see, kindness is truthfulness. And when Jethro came to Moses, he was being truthful. And he was telling him, it's going to burn you out. The burden is too heavy. It will crush you. But here's what I think you can do to help yourself out. John 10:3-5, paraphrase here a little bit. "The sheep hear the voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out, for they know his voice." In this analogy, the sheep follow the shepherd not because he has the staff or the title, but because they know him. There's a relationship. There's a knowing voice. They hear the voice. They recognize the voice, and they come to it. That is the prerequisite for leadership and direction. The sheep have to know the shepherd. And it's a two-way street, right? The followers have to know the leaders, and the leaders have to know the followers. When that relationship is built and on a solid foundation, these conversations are supremely beneficial. And they can happen in a safe place. They can happen with the best intentions and the best outcomes because you have that relationship. Even Jesus coming down to live as man, to be tempted as we were, to know men, so that God can create an eternal relationship with his people. And Jesus came down and became man, knew everything there is to know about man because he was one. And now he can be our advocate for God because he experienced the things that we experience, and he knows the struggles that we go through, the temptations that we have. And he wanted that relationship with us so much that he sent his son and had him die on a cross so that he could eternally have that relationship with us. That's the extent that our God is willing to go for that relationship because it matters. Number two, valuable experience matters. Not just Moses' father-in-law, but he was a priest, a leader in his own tribe. most likely having been involved or witnessed similar situations and knows the potential harm it can bring in those circumstances. Um, when we're talking about experience, you'll never hear me criticize a musician. I can't play an instrument. I can't carry a tone or a tune. I can't sing well. I will not criticize Kelly or even Keith when they're over there singing the Christmas carols. I thought they did an amazing job. Way better than I sound more like a frog than anything. But I won't criticize people that lead singing because that's a talent that they have, and I don't have it. I don't have that experience to be able to say, "Well, you're kind of off on that note there, Kevin." He would know way more than me about what note he was off on or not. So I don't have that experience. I don't have that talent. There's not a place for me to criticize or give counsel in that arena. Do I have the credentials for my words to be heard? Have I been in a similar situation where I can help this person avoid these landmines or steady the ship or right the ship in order for them to be successful in what they're trying to do? If I haven't been in these similar situations, I can still have good advice. I think it matters how you approach that discussion and that situation, much like Jethro did. Proverbs 20:29 says, "The glory of a young man is their strength, but the splendor of old men is their gray hair." I love that line. I love that verse. And I'm getting some gray hair, so watch out. Hebrews 5:14 says, "But solid food is for the mature, who because of practice have their senses trained to discern good and evil." Titus 2 talks about, Paul calls the older women to be reverent and train the young women to be their source of counsel on practical life matters. The value here is anchored in the life stage of the counselor. And you see all throughout the scripture where there is a training protocol that's instilled in God's people, where it's not just all one side, one age group doing all the work, or the young ones doing all the work and the old ones leading. There were kings that were young. There were leaders in the church that were young. Timothy comes to mind, and Paul tells him to be of good courage and don't let your youth be despised because you are a man of God. And us older need to be able to support those that are younger that have the desire to lead, to lead in whatever fashion that is, but train them in the right way so that when they are old, they don't depart from it. Lastly, the timing, location, and delivery of these conversations matter. The scripture doesn't specifically say, when Jethro approached Moses, but it does say that he watched him work from morning to night. And so there is a bit of an inference, or I'll take some liberties and assume that he came to him by himself and they had a conversation one-on-one. It wasn't in front of the people, in which Moses' authority would have been circumvented by someone else giving him advice that he took, or talking down to him a little bit when he said, "Listen to what I have to say." There wasn't any opportunity for someone to mishear that conversation. So it would have been a one-on-one, I believe. And so when you look at that setting and the timing, he observed the situation. He came to him at the right time, and they had the conversation. One of the rules that we had, I helped coach Jaden's football team this year. And one of the rules they had was for the parents, if you have a problem with a game, whether your little Johnny didn't get enough playing time, or you didn't like a play call, or whatever the issue may be, to take 24 hours and sleep on it and then talk to the coach. Don't come up to them after the game and give a complaint. And the reason behind it is that there's a lot of emotions during these games, and win or lose, you're usually on a pretty big roller coaster, especially if you lose. Coaches usually don't want to be talked to after a loss, especially if it's critical. So they have this 24-hour wait period, which is a great idea. It kind of lets the thoughts marinate a little bit, let you collect your thoughts before saying something that maybe you'll regret later. So when dealing with corrective advice, never approach in the heat of the moment or disrupt the event to make your feelings known. Emotionally charged conversations rarely go the way you intend. And speaking from experience, I think when you're younger, those emotions drive your decision making. When you're younger, you have this feeling of I've got to get it off my chest. I have to let you know immediately, because the longer it sits on me, the harder it's going to be on me. And so I need somebody to take this burden away from me, right? And so we want to reach out. We want to get it off. We want to have those conversations. But time is good. Time can heal all wounds. And unless you intend to burn it down, just let the fire settle a bit and then have that conversation when you have a clearer head. But giving advice in general, I think it's a good approach here. Make it one-on-one. Make it about you and that person. If it's important enough to have a conversation about, it's important enough to schedule a time to do it. It's not about them. It's about them. It's not about you. Jethro doesn't throw his own experiences into the conversation or reference his own issues and bring in this context of why he's able to have this conversation and give this advice. He just tells Moses what he thinks. And because of their relationship, Moses trusts him because he knows his experience as well. He makes it simply about Moses and how he can improve his own circumstances. Sometimes it's how you say it, not what you say, that makes the impact. When we were first married, we'd have conversations, me and Macy, and I would say something in my head. It sounded fine, but the way it came out had this tone that just didn't work for her. And so we had more arguments over my tone than we did anything. And I didn't realize for, I don't know, it might have been 5-6 years before I realized, like, oh, yeah, that does sound bad. I didn't mean to say it that way. But sometimes that tone makes what you're trying to say harsher than you mean it to say. Sometimes what you say, sometimes how you say it is more important than what you're saying. Because if you say it wrong, even as great of an idea as it may be heard incorrectly. So think about how you're presenting the information. I am good. Well, if anything, I just finished on time. All right, so next week we are going to talk about Moses. I wanted to get through Jethro. I thought it was important. The conversation that he has there with Moses just shows kind of the wisdom that he had to be able to present it, and then the steps that he took to get that information across to really help Moses and the people of Israel. So lesson's yours. Next week we'll be talking about Moses. You are dismissed.